There we go, folks. Left to it to my own devices today and cocking it all up. There we go. Yeah, a bit of an impromptu one. I did mention on the Koi Talk Live last week that I was going to drop in just to have a bit of a catch up over on here, really. Work through, see if there's anybody there sat at home, not doing them much better, or even sat at work wanting to escape from it all. So, yeah, I'm here. A few updates on what's happening and a bit of a run through some questions. But if you are out there watching and anything you'd like me to answer or work on, then drop it in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see what we can do. But Koi Wholesale wise, obviously that time of year, getting really busy with the growing ponds. At the minute, that's always a fun time of year. Really having to work and concentrate on feeding patterns at the minute. It's phenomenal how, if I take the pond, I've got the Dainichi Kohaku in and some of the yellow monkeys. They've been growing really well, in all fairness. But there's now, I just noticed, as I start observing the feeding more, that they're growing with the length, but not the body impact that I'm expecting them to have at that age and they need to be having. And that's just a case of really blitzing through the feeding and taking that feeding up to new heights. Now, Mr. Hadfield, how are you doing? Seems we've got a few sat at work as well. There we go, love it. Good fun. So over the course of the past week, I've been really monitoring that feeding, working hard on it, and it's amazing. Also, two things, the change in them so rapidly. All of a sudden, they look like they've grown, 3 centimeters in the past week, but there's just a big increase in body mass so rapidly as well. I always find that with the Saki especially, you just get this massive changeover so quickly. So yeah, really getting there. But that particular pond, it's amazing how two things have happened. I was feeding small pellet up to the fish, probably on average being around up to 30 centimeters. So I tend to do that kind of 25 to 30 cm will be my changeover point. But that changeover has made a big difference. What happens is, obviously, because of the surface area, I end up feeding a little bit kind of less food over the same amount of time. So, been working on upping that, but just this changeover is crazy. But it seems to be with the pond, strangely enough, as I put the pond under more pressure, it started performing better, which there's a lot to be sort of said there, really, when obviously that's all of a sudden making that bacteria work harder, ultimately giving it more food, giving it more waste product, and all of a sudden it's the pond's visibly performing a hell of a lot better than it was. Morning, Ian, how you doing, buddy? Here we go, Plume. I've got to do all the comments today as well, folks, so bear with me. If you see me venturing off, it's because I've dived into there. But morning, Paul, thanks for joining us. So it really is fascinating. Obviously, the pond's at 25 degrees in that greenhouse. They're holding out ambiently now at 23, even though the weather's still pretty shoddy. Just by losing them really cold nights and getting a bit of sunshine in the day, we get that extra bit of temperature, which is always nice. So I see a few more people have joined us now on the stream. So thank you for that, and feel free to pop any questions in that you've got. Koi related. But yeah, I always think this, people, sometimes I think probably filters don't get put under enough pressure, and it's a fascinating concept to work through. And when you sort of, your eyes are into all the data, maybe on the test kits too much, things like that, it'll make you be a little bit too cautious over the realities. And this is something, we've got a guy who follows the videos over in Japan a lot, and he's always got some pretty stern words to say, in all fairness. I love the guy. And he's sort of like, he constantly just reminded me of this Japanese method of sort of koi keeping, where it's all basically done by eyesight. And I know there's a certain level of experience needed in that. I'm not daft, I'm aware of it. But when you can get to that point and you've got a good system, you understand how it all works, and when there's problems visually, and you really just get into focusing on observing the fish, what's going on with the fish. You don't need any sort of data or science to know if your fish is too fat or too skinny and you need to feed it more or feed it less. It's a very simple process, just using a time mechanism when the feeder goes off to monitor that feed, to know that you probably need an adjustment. there's no science to that. It's quite a simple process. Don't get me wrong, you can go down the science route. Sakai Fish Farm has been doing that, and they're probably the results are phenomenal, but it doesn't need to be that way, because when you've got the wrong mindset, you can really start over analyzing this stuff and make the hobby far more complicated than it needs to be. Skin luster, paying attention to these things and understanding when skin's good or bad, because instantly that can tell you that there's a problem. I've seen it in one pond this week at the farm, which we're not quite sure what's happened yet. We're still investigating it, but it could be that one of the purifiers was shot. Been a bit too much water gone through, which is what I'm suspecting. And yeah, the skin's pinkened up a bit. Some of the mucus has flared up on a couple of fish, not all of them, which is normally when it tells me that's not something like a parasitic issue that could be pond wide. It's something that's affected the environment and affected a couple of fish that are possibly a bit weaker. So straight from that, and then ultimately I've got some symptoms, and when I've ruled all the things out, we know what we're dealing with. So that pond now, just as safety, we dechlorinated the whole pond, and we've increased, started raising the salt level up. We've already got the heat, just to let their immune system pull round a bit quicker. So yeah, it's a bit of a reminder really of this whole sort of mission, the keep it simple mantra that I bang on about, which it is a point every koi keeper can get to. It's just taking the right route and understanding and looking at things properly, not getting too drawn into all the information, all the data, overanalyze all the gadgets and things that you can buy, just take you away from what the most important thing should be in is, and studying those fish, making sure those fish are doing the best they can, exposing yourself more to when a fish does actually look at its peak. And this is a big thing I actually find, my benchmarks, everything I've got is based on what I've seen, and you need exposure to all this stuff. So, in Japan, I've seen fish at the All Japan at their absolute peak. I've seen what Benny looks like at its absolute peak, skin luster, body, size expectations for age, you name it. And that's all formed a benchmark and a standard in my head that when I'm doing this, that's my expectation of myself to be able to achieve that. If Dainichi can raise a Nisai to 60, 65 cm, I should be able to do that as well. The fish is capable. And obviously then it's not only just hitting the size, it's what that fish looks like with the correct level of body, because you will get that. There's not just a natural size. You can get it to 65 cm. I mean, my God, I saw an agent advertising a fish the other day. I think it was nearly 90 cm, this Hiyotsuri, but it looked like a stickleback. It was absolutely shocking. And to look at the video, without knowing the size, you would look at that and think it wasn't a big fish at all. It was probably 75% short of the body mass that it should have. So it makes such a massive, massive difference to it. And I think that's where having that standard set in your head, it's then a case of just, reverse engineering and letting them, holding on to them standards. So, what do I need to do to achieve that body? I know I can get the length, but I need that extra body. Well, then I know I've got to work on the feeding and possibly then the diet that I'm using and the temperatures even that I'm setting, and the growth pattern throughout the summer, the growth routine throughout the summer. Does it need to be anything in winter as well? There's all these questions. And when you see that skin luster, when you see the pigmentation level, because I think that's a thing that's, actually such an easy thing to achieve when you've got Japanese fish, because most of them have the genetic capability. But how do you eke that out? All of a sudden, you're covering your pond, so you're not getting the UV penetration through properly, or you're not using color foods to raise that color up to what it's be, or your water might be particularly soft, which can soften the Benny up as well. So all these things that when you're looking at your fish, well, right, okay, that's not where I expect it to be. How can I reverse engineer to get it back there? And that's just everything. So everything for me when I'm at this, obviously, a long time into it now, is done by eye. What I see, where we at, and then how do we improve? How do we get better? What do we do? If I know a pond needs food, but I know the pond's needs more food, but I know that I can see the water's physically struggling, the fish are struggling. We had it yesterday with a particular pond as well. Just straight away looked in, and from one day to the next, the all of a sudden they were great, and then all of a sudden they didn't want the food, weren't interested in it, and I'm just looking, and we knew something's happened. And again, just got to reverse engineer it. But then the action to take is quite simple. I didn't need to do anything. Stop feeding first of all. and then diagnose the problem, because it's no good in that environment just to keep hammering them with food when you don't know what the issue is, to be fair. So and then reverse engineer it. But I know all in that same time, probably a bit too much happened. It's had its maintenance interval. They also buffered with bicarb, might have just swung the pH a little bit too much. And just weirdly enough, the spray bar return had changed direction as well, which wouldn't have been as efficient in surface agitation as it should have been, which could have affected oxygen levels a little bit. So without knowing, I mean, we can pinpoint any of this. I might get answers on all of it, but ultimately change that around, and I've not been to check it on yet, but when I do, hopefully we'll see a change and can start introducing the food back on. So all these different scenarios that you can really sort of overcomplicate, but I like that guy say who comments, Atsuki, I think his name is, because he does remind me constantly of the guys that I've always idolized and how they do it with such simplicity, just through that, building up that knowledge, experience, and not being in a market, to be fair, that's absolutely dedicated and dictated by commercialism. The Japanese market for koi products is so tiny compared to what we've got, you know. And I actually had this I did a short video out on the channel recently about you know, the quality of Japanese equipment is phenomenal. You know, it's stuff that lasts a lifetime, because ultimately their market mainly is selling to the breeders. And breeders, despite how much money they do or don't make, when they buy equipment, they want it to last 20, 30 years. I know that sounds crazy, but that's their attitude in buying it. Getting them to part with the cash is not easy. But when they do it, they know it wants to last. And they get everything right. You know, they've paid attention to the market. The nets, not only the nets, you know, last a lifetime, they use the right materials. You know, recently we've had our holding nets changed, because it was all Japanese ones that I was using. I used to bring back in my suitcase. And then all of a sudden now we've changed to a European made one, which are considerably cheaper, and we can't hold big fish in them because they're just rubbing their noses up. And that's nothing other than a cheaper material being used that's obviously slightly more abrasive than the Japanese one. So that all of a sudden feels like money, you know, just sort of flushed down the drain, to be fair. And it's always the case, like I say, with the nets, that not only do they get the quality right, you know, they pay attention to getting the depth of the pan right as well. So, you know, it's the right depth, that it's not too much and cause the fish to jump too easily, and not too shallow, as we see a lot of them over here, which can cause a lot of damage. So, yeah, their market is really, really different. You know, UV lights, the sort of units as we know them that we pass water through. I mean, going back probably 3 years, I saw them at a breeder's fish out, and they was acting like it was some absolute, you know, revolution. And we've had them for years, which is fair play, but that's just an idea of how far they are behind with things. But they're not getting hit, and it's hard to sell them to the breeders, because the breeders know ultimately they get the pond, they look after the water, they understand how to feed the fish properly, which is still the massive one for me. That's actually, I'm going to cut off where I'm at now, because we've done 2 breeders interviews for Koi Talk magazine now. And you know, a lot of questions in there I put in about raising koi, one with Nogami, one with Marido. And my God, you know, but when I heard these guys, them talking about just the importance of feeding, you know, how do you raise jumbo fish, genetics and food, and the environment obviously gets slipped in there, but genetics and food just keep coming up absolutely constantly. And it's right there. You know, you master the food, you master the feeding, and then, you know, make sure the environment around it is functioning properly, you game on. You know, rather there's areas again where you choose to spend money where I probably wouldn't. You know, you might be running heavier pumps for something where those dollars could go towards heating, for example. The whole process of heating in winter that I've discussed numerous times, with people heating too warm in winter when there's no need to, and actually where they could be saving those dollars to spend on summer heating, where they're going to have massive benefit and much more enjoyment in the hobby as well. So I think it's all a mindset. And I know over here we have so much drummed into us, and it's a lot of it is led from consumerism, and that's not just in koi, that's across everything in the sort of Western world we see it. So yeah, it's a hard one to disconnect your head from, but I think when you can and you can see through a lot of that stuff, it opens you up to a completely different outlook on it all that can allow you to enjoy the hobby on a completely different level. And that's ultimately what we want. You know, you don't want to be getting stressed out with it all too much. It can be stressful, but when you're getting so much information fed into you, so many different things, you know, that you need this, you need this, you need this, you need this. And let's say I just look at it and look how simply it can be done. The Secret Sankey event is going to be the one that's going to show a lot of people, all those participants. I mean, my God, the pond is really sort of filled out now. It's crazy, but I shared a little update on those last week as well. And that's a 1,200 gallon pond that's single 4-inch bottom drain into a brush chamber. Then that just passes through into a fluid bed chamber that's homemade. The pump's in the bottom of that chamber that runs out through the UV and then straight back into the pond through the spray bar return. There's one air pump. That one air pump pumps into the fluid bed. It's an Airtech 120. It's quite a big pump. There's 300 litres of K1 in there. The maintenance interval on that is done twice a week on that pond at the minute, which will be a really full bottom drain purge because they're actually sat level like that. We use a standpipe to create that purge as we drain the chamber off. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, the clarity is not amazing because there's a lot of food going in there. But again, it's something I've spoke about all the time. I get it when it's a hobby, you want to see your fish more, but there comes a point where this whole thing of, your crystal clear water can actually work at a disadvantage to your fish. It can be quite damaging for the skin, for the pigment, the swings and roundabouts. So I can't wait to people to see how these fish look, the end results. I mean, a lot of them have already packed 10 to 15 centimeters on with incredible change in body, skin absolutely shining, looking superb. So I'm hoping that inspires everybody involved to maybe relook at what they're doing and see what can be done on such a basic system, because all things considered, that pond would not cost a lot of money to slap up. And the running costs, we've got an efficient heating system in our case. So all that considered, it's not expensive. I choose to invest the money in the food, in the heating, and then apply the knowledge and experience I've got, and away we go. So yeah, can't wait to really to show all that, and particularly the participants to see firsthand what's happened. So enough of that little rant. It's been on my mind a little bit, and say thanks to the guy who I think that's Atsuki, I can't quite remember, who comments on all the videos, takes the time just to reminding me of that culture, which inspired me so much and influences massively the way I keep koi. And it literally will be as complicated as you want to make it, but as more complication comes, so more will the stressors. And ultimately, you probably might not even get the end result. That's why it's better worth investing in your time, your knowledge, to see fish, see as many fish as you can at all different levels, to know what's good, what's bad, and how ultimately they should look in your pond. It's an interesting one, but yeah, there we go. I hope some people can take something from that, and the whole mindset and culture towards it. I know it has been having quite a big impact. So yeah, long may it continue. And morning, Evo, how you doing, buddy? Yes, so right, we've got some questions fired through, so bear with me a second. I'm just, to make it easy, I'm going to work from the top and work down and see where we get to. So Koi bites, why are 4-inch pipes used over 3-inch pipes with bottom drains? I would have thought 3-inch pipe would do away with the need to purge. Yeah, it's basically its flow capability with that one. You can use 3-inch, but it will restrict the amount of flow you can actually pull through the drain. I think a 4-inch drain's quoted around 18 to 20,000 litres a maximum you can actually pull through it. So if you create more demand than that at the other end through your pump, you are going to end up not holding enough water in that gravity-fed system, because there'll be too much demand on it. So that is why we're using it. It makes sense to use a smaller one, because obviously you clear it, but you're always going to need to purge with the bottom drain. You cannot beat the force it goes with. And I was just been speaking about the purge, that Japanese system. I keep saying it because it's a concept to get in mind. Obviously, drum filters are doing this constantly throughout the day, removing the waste from the water. But do you ultimately need to spend thousands of pounds for an action? If you boil it down, the big benefits of that drum filter, yes, it's automated, but I see it is removing the waste from the water body continuously. But does it need to be continuously? If it's done once, twice a day through a quick purge, You know, the Japanese ponds, that bottom drain goes straight to a chamber where literally the two exits are level. So they've got these huge standpipes, the full depth of the pond that, you know, once, twice a day, they pull that, purge all the waste from the drain, and job's a good one. But it goes with such a flow because you've got all the pressure of that water pushing down on that pipe, trying to force its way out. It completely clears that drain run. There's no doubt about it. It clears it completely. So there's nothing left in there. So when you start thinking about that concept as well, you know, are we doing it right? Are they doing it right? Are we doing it right? You know, who's wrong in all that? Because the way we set our drains up, mainly without a purge, even if you're running into a nexus, for example, if you look at the height of the nexus, where it sort of tails off, you've ultimately, it's not normally too far below the water level. So the pressure and the weight on the purge isn't quite the same as you get from that mentality. I've seen how the water fires up. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we do get build up, you know. So this whole mentality, yeah, seems to make sense. But purges is something more and more, especially with the systems we've got these days. Your drums, sieves, anything like that, fitting a purge in front of it, whether it's, you know, 4-inch, it does need to be really. You want that purge there for sure, just to ensure that you're getting rid of everything, and it is massively beneficial to do it. Let's say in the case of the breeders, their system then is actually running. The filter system is fed by a mid-water feed that's obviously, it will take waste through still, but it's not the heavy waste, and then that normally leads to settlement before it then passes to the biological chamber to keep all that side nice and clear. But yeah, good question there. Graham, morning Ricky, hope you're well. I'm struggling with adding filtration to my setup. Which order should filtration be in from UV, multi-beta, moving bed, static bed? Please tell me which media is best. Right, sorry, I'm struggling to break that one down a bit, Graham. So I'm struggling to filter. Which order should filtration be in from UV, multi-beta, moving bed, static bed? Yeah, just break that one down for me a bit more, Graham. So is it a gravity fed system that you're running, or a pump fed system? And what are you actually wanting to know here? Which media? You just wanted to know what media is best for your moving bed. I always go with K1 just because it's tried and tested for me. I see no point in changing it. It served me really well, and I just believe in the environment K1 creates. So I hope that answers that bit. If you want me to expand on that more, mate, just give me a bit more clarity on the question, please. Hi, Ricky. I've just invested in a jumbo toe-size shower from Dainichi Super Monster. What can you tell me about Sumi development in this bloodline? Yeah, so it's the one that the Super Monster strain. I mean, we're a long, long way down this process now with this. I mean, the first monster lineage came from Dainichi crossing in Momotaro, Mako, Showa into the lineage, because ultimately what Momotaro did with Mako, Showa, after they crossed Kohaku blood into it, was correct a lot of the body issues, and ultimately they started producing Super Jumbo Showa, a meter or so, with the body line. You know, Showa have this typically more stout frame with a lot more height, and Dainichi managed to obviously, you know, get the size elements, the 80, 85s, 90s, but then all of a sudden Momotaro came along and was like, Bosch, a meter. Absolutely wild. And they did that by crossing the Mako Kohaku blood into that lineage. So I've seen a video of it circulating. Actually, Shigeru, you know, bought this fish at Momotaro, crossed that in with Dainichi, and created the Mako line. Sorry, the Super Monster, or the Monster line. What that did actually do was change the Sumi a lot, because Momotaro Showa Sumi is very different. I wouldn't say it's of the quality of Dainichi. It's nowhere near. Dainichi Showa is created the best Sumi available, which now is at the heart of many others, such as Issa and other bloodlines. So that was something that I actually saw that in these fish, that it did change. They kind of lost the Sumi quality a little bit in that lineage early doors, which the guys would have seen that and knew it was something that they then had to work on. And you get that several generations down the line. But the Sumi style does seem to be different with the Monster, in that typical Dainichi Sumi you see kind of has that Kage looking effect, that greyish Sumi that's sat under the skin. And it comes up over time. It's coming from deep within the skin. It's forming layer upon layer until it finishes, and you get that super polished, shiny finish to it. The other type of Sumi I've spoke about is the one that materializes more in the top of the skin. and then kind of works its way down, which you get nice depth to it, but it's not quite as stable. And it is a bit more leery and unpredictable. And that seems to be more the Momotaro Sumi, which then kind of passed into the Dainichi Showa a bit. But now where you're at the point, they've pulled more of the quality back for sure. I mean, the Sumi quality, them early monster line, just wasn't anything to write home about in the slightest. But that has come a long way now. But I do see more of those characteristics in it being very rapidly developing Sumi that you can't necessarily see sat under the skin. But it comes up pretty fast and just progresses. So size-wise, have I seen any any major change over the other Dainichi fish? Not in that respect. No, I can't say I've seen the super monster fish disproportionately growing bigger than any of the other Dainichi lineages. And we've not really seen them, bring any super jumbo examples to market other than what they're already doing. So I think you've got a great bloodline there for sure, and just I think the biggest thing you'll notice is there could be difference in the Sumi to the traditional Dainichi lineages. So I hope that's useful for you. Right, let's have a look. Amanda Smith, help, new pond syndrome, 3 weeks old, ammonia 0.7, nitrate 192, doing 10% water change and using back to plus PSB. Grams a day and 30 small toci. I know too many koi, but they all look okay. Hungry. Amanda, I need more information to help you with that one. So are you heated? Are you unheated? What kind of filter system are you running? I am one that I tend to steer away too much from doing too many water changes for doing this because what I find is, if you're doing the water changes incorrectly, you might be leaching some chlorine in, which could be damaging the frail bacteria that's building up. But just through maturing ponds, I tend to find the best way is to stop with the manual intervention and let the ecosystem build without the interference. But what that's going to be governed by is you don't want that ammonia getting too high. You're doing the right thing using like PSB to control it a little bit more so than the water changes. You're also doing the right thing keeping them on the food, because the last thing you want is the toci getting malnourished through not feeding and then having to deal with all this as well. But what that does is, don't take your foot off the gas. And I say this, the big variable in this is the heat, because if you've got, water at 24 degrees, we can really push through this cycle quickly and get rid of that ammonia by keeping them on the food, keep feeding that filter, because ultimately that waste product, that ammonia is the food for the bacteria in the filter. We've just got to let that biofilm build up, and you want to, try and not interrupt it as much as possible. Nitrate, we're not worrying about that right now. You just want to focus on getting rid of that ammonia. So keep going with the PSB, possibly reduce the water changes, because what you're going to do is, you can get the spike. But again, I'm saying this based on the water being warm. So if the water's, in the mid-20s, we're nice and hot, we can really push through that. Stop with the water changes. The ammonia's got a peak. It'll come up. It might even come up higher, then quickly fall off, because when the water's warm, the filter bacteria is metabolizing and growing a lot faster, multiplying a lot faster, and then you're going to get to the end goal a lot quicker, which is then to flip that. Your nitrite spike will come. It's the typical new pond syndrome process, but we just want that ammonia gone as quickly as possible. So if you want to let me know a bit more about where your system's at and if you're heated or not, maybe come back to that one a little bit further down the line. Koi Bites, do you know if anyone uses the pool heaters for their ponds, as the price difference for what seems to be the same thing is huge? Yeah, if you're on about the electric ones, to be honest with you, we did this very same thing when I was using them. So we went to the pool heaters because we found the same difference, to be honest with you. And if I'm being completely frank about it, they're all shit. So I probably wouldn't waste your time. They're all right temporarily. So if you're willing to pay out the money, knowing that you're probably going to need to pay out again for it, if you look at that, obviously stack the cost against something dearer like the Electro heaters, which tend to be a bit more reliable. We were in that mindset, to be honest with you, because the price gap was so much. It's like, well, it probably makes sense just to keep buying these ones and keep replacing them. So, but ultimately, I wanted away from electric heating, full stop. So, I'd go with the cheapest, because I don't think they're any different in the slightest. Just different packaging and equally unreliable. So that'd be my one on that. And then another one, what's the max salt level you go to? For me personally, it depends on what we're dealing with and how severe it is. Normally up to about 0.6% maximum. I know people have gone up to kind of 0.9 for treating costia and stuff like that. I find it an absolutely balmy way to do it. And sometimes in really severe sleeping sickness, I've had to go higher as well. But that's only ever been a couple of times. Other than that, up to 0.6 suffices if you're needing to actually use the salt to treat something. If you're not, and you're just using a background level against nitrite or something, 0.3% will be, which is ½ ounce per gallon, will absolutely suffice. Paul, at what pH do you run your ponds at? Are you more concerned with pH levels or pH stability? pH stability every time. It's the swings that piss people off. But I'm talking big swings as well. You know, if you're monitoring and you're getting these tiny fractions all the time, it's that. But even, you know, the pH, we're more looking at the KH more than anything, keeping the KH stable, because we know when the KH stable, we're going to get the natural swings of pH, but it's not going to be anything massive, and we're not going to get the pH crash out. You know, it's very, very rare that you're going to have a pH crash when you've got a stable KH reading, because that's there acting as your buffer, your natural buffer to it. So yeah, stability every time for me with that one, and what actually level it runs at, I don't give too much of a monkey's, never have done. So hope that's useful. Ian Satchwell, how are we doing, buddy? I think knowing your koi is essential. I have certain koi that are always the ones that tell me if there's an issue, and they'll seem bulletproof. Yeah, exactly. There's always the more sensitive ones, and they do tell you everything. And it just ties back to me, you know, I think you can overanalyze, be looking at too much and finding problems that aren't really problems. If you really can get it to the point of you're looking, you know, you've got some experience under your belt, you know when your pond run is running right, when things are correct, and you can look and you have enough to know, yeah, you've got that fish that, oh, something's not 100% there, then start looking at what the cause could be, rather than trying to find the cause for a problem that's not happened or existing yet. That's just the way round trying to get it. And again, I know when you're new to this, you've got to get into those routines of analyzing everything to get an understanding of what's going on. But even from the outset, if you can learn to read the koi more so than everything else and read the environment, then just know, you know, when problems are there, then go looking and diagnosing. You'll go a long way in the hobby, and certainly in raising koi properly. Yeah, Andrew there, just kind of on it as well. 100% know your koi. They tell you when something is wrong, water quality or health. Absolutely. Ian again. I seem to be able to put body on very easily. Maybe I should put my koi on the same diet as me. Yeah, it's good fun, that, mate, isn't it? I'm going through that one myself, backwards and forwards. However, the football is helping a treat, guys. I'm not going to lie. Love getting back to playing some five-a-side, and I've been trimming up quite nicely recently, and the legs are coming back. So God help them all on a Tuesday night. Right, here we go. I must sound like a Luddite. I don't test, don't salt, just observe, and yet I love tech, which makes me question myself. Should I dive in and get consumed? Lee, love the videos, follow the journey. Thank you very much, buddy. No, don't jump in, don't get consumed. Salt, I can't say. That's an argument I never. In certain cases, hobbyist cases, not so much, but salt can be an essential tool. It's not just something you go throwing in, but you know, will be essential. And testing, there are certain bits you will need to test. As much as I say this, we are on KH. That is the big one for us, absolutely constantly, because I think it's so important, and the glue in that system, keeping so many things pinned together. But yeah, other than that, buddy, love it, and keep that tech away, in my opinion. I am going to settle on some designs for this new fish house soon, but there will be very, very few electronics and moving parts in it. That bit I can assure you. And I'm also going to do it just to really show what can be achieved, you know, through sheer knowledge and experience, and on a very, very basic system in regards to water clarity, quality, and everything. So yeah, can't wait to get cracking with that. Philip Whitburn, how you doing? A few of my koi have cart pox. It puts me off spending too much money on new koi. If I spend £500 and get cart pox, it's gutting. Is there anything I can do? I can't treat the pox, remove the koi. No, so Phil, I mean, it shouldn't be. Obviously, pox is a viral thing, seasonal. It tends to get them more in the winter. Obviously, when the temperatures drop off, their immune system drops off, and then you get that kind of pox come out. It shouldn't really be a problem. As your water warms up enough, the pop should naturally clear. It might not be, you might not be getting the temperatures enough. A few fish can be stubborn with it as well. I'll never forget having one that was head to tail, absolute mess, full blooming pops with the sort of pinkness it can get to it as well. And even in 28-degree water, it wasn't shifting. So, that's more of an immune kind of system response problem there. But other than that, this is just something that comes in winter, naturally clears up. What you can do is maintain your temperature more. If you haven't got heating already, not let it get too cold in winter, and then getting that heat on in the summer is probably going to keep that pox away, to be honest. So, yeah, I shouldn't see it should put you off. It's not every fish that it affects. So, maybe just look at the environment and how you're keeping and how you can actually control that to stop it happening and frustrating you. Carl, hi Ricky. Do you think someone could buy a cheap koi and still have a chance of it going on to be a show win in time to come? Absolutely. Certainly over here, even in Japan, if you've got the right eye and you can find the fish, it's not about price, it's about understanding what can win. And it's not always, a lot of showfish in Japan, it's all done by the breeder putting fish forwards. But sometimes there's fish you can find that have been overlooked by them guys that can win awards just because their eye's not seeing it. Not every koi breeder's got a seasoned koi show eye. It really is a different way of looking at fish altogether. And likewise, that's the same over here. You can be looking at fish that and actually I did this yesterday. We did a video of some Odecan shower that I've got in. And basically, I'm just showing people, that video will be out before long, but showing people the difference in, at that moment, there's not a batch of fish I'm really bought to grow on. But there's an element to those fish of ones that need a lot of time and ones that I'm actually putting out for sale that are looking great now, that you would find the showfish in there. So, you might be looking at the fish and, you're looking at potential, whereas something that's right there that hasn't got potential, really too much longevity in the future, could be good for the here and now. And you pick that fish up for a fair price because somebody else is looking at it who weights more value on the future rather than the here and now. And that happens in my case a lot. There's fish I'll come across that I know, right, my aim is I want to grow these, I want to get some size on them. I know that fish can't achieve it, therefore I release it for sale at that point, but could go on and be a great showfish at size 1, 2, 3 maybe across them. But not really going beyond it. So there's loads of variables to all this. It's why it's important to tune in your skills, tune in your eye, and don't, again, block out the external noise as well. Don't be driven by all of that stuff. Go with what's you, take the fish, learn from it, learn why they didn't win. I would say certainly over here in the UK, getting to know, the judges and what they're looking at, because this is something I had with Alan, to be honest with you, when at the Great British Koi Show last year, was understanding, because for a fish for me was a standout fish at the show, not to get placed where I thought it should have done, then instantly be told by them, it's because the Benny's not finished, which I found it was just so much better than the other fish, in my opinion, and would have gone on certainly in the future to dominate more. But that's the criteria they're looking at. So ultimately, they're the guys that decide what win the awards. And that can really help steer the way you're purchasing the fish for the show. So, yeah, you absolutely can. But I think it's a case of becoming educated. Knowledge is key in all this, knowledge and experience, and get stuck in, learn from that experience, because it's the best way. As much as I can tell you stuff, you can read stuff, others can tell you stuff. There's nothing going to beat that first-hand experience for you. So, yeah, get stuck in, get balls deep in it, Carl, and hopefully you'll learn. And, yeah, definitely. I think as more knowledge comes, it'll reduce the amount of money you feel you need to spend to get the results. So, yeah, interesting one. All right, here we go. Football banter. Good morning, fella. Bad result last night. Yes, it was. Absolute stinker. So, it was such a poor match. I think I fell asleep in the second half. So, there we are. My question today is, I'm using Nishikoi Clear Water, great product, but the black finds as it breaks down. The blanket weed is a tough battle to keep on top of. Any advice or alternatives to make life easier? So yeah, blanket wise, well, here's one alternative. Fill your pond wall to wall with koi. Absolutely great way of keeping on top of the blanket weed. If you don't want to do that, the other alternative, I've always used Colombo Algacin, to be fair, because I find it has the most gentle impact on the environment. and really just cuts the weed back rather than destroying it. I've seen this happen a lot with blanket weed treatments where it just kills the walls off to the point where the regrowth even struggles. You want a nice coating of algae on your walls. You just don't want it to get too big and out of control. And for me, Columbo algacin's always delivered really well with no negative impacts on the fish as well. Like I say, not too destructive to the environment. So that would be my shout on that one. Right, just give me a second. Thank you very much for all the questions, folks. I can see they're coming in faster than I can seem to answer them. And fair amount of people tuned in as well, which is always appreciated. There we go. Chris Brand. I've had my above ground 3,000 gallon pond for 8 years, have 5 fish at over 70 cm and a few at 30 to 40 cm. It's a worry as to why I can rebuild in my new location. Right, Chris. Yeah, I'm not sure there's actually a question in that, buddy, but hope you can get that sorted. And yeah, I'm sure it's in the post, mate. I don't get involved in all that stuff, but I'm sure it'll be on its way out to you if you've ordered one. But thank you very much for that. Right, just bear with me, guys. I'm seeing where we're at. Tobias, right. Hi, Ricky. What are the smallest sizes of koi you get from Japan? And do you know anywhere in the EU where you can get NND Showa? Right, so yeah, smallest sizes. The normally smallest size we can buy is like 7 to 9 cm fish. Only a couple of breeders really doing them now, to be fair. There used to be a lot back in the day, but this is commercially not a really great and viable option for a lot of breeders. So that's really died off a lot. 10 to 12 cm is probably the most common small size that we get. So that's where you're at with that. And no, unfortunately, I don't know anywhere in the EU that do NND Showa. However, what I would suggest is look at the Mr. Nishikoi website and see what agents they've got around Europe, because they do a lot with NND and you might be able to track something down that way, buddy. So hope that can help you in getting one, because that NND Showa lineage at the minute is absolutely banging. Body and head, I mean, the heads on them just jackhammers. It's insane. Taylor Rooney, hello. I'm a mega Showa nerd. Who does the best? Dainichi, Issa, they're for me top two. You're not going to get much better than them in regards to what the lineage is capable of. Loads of other great ones around, like I've just mentioned. The NND one really depends where you're sat at budget wise, how much you want to spend on getting, whether you want Tosai, Nisai, male, female. That's all really going to have the impacts. But yeah, them guys there for me. There's always something new as well. You've got to remember, like this NND lineage, where it's at right now. It's gone through many evolutions back from being the Umo Showa lineage to where it's at. And yeah, that is where we're at right now. So, they've changed. They've got this particular parent they're working with this insane head. And it is really coming through in the offspring. Obviously, during his selection, must be really focusing on that. So, yeah, it depends where you're at. And if you want something different, this is what I always find. It's easy for me to say, yeah, it's Dainichi or Issa. But if you've got one of them in your collection already, sometimes collecting is about getting these different styles of fish. It's the one thing that keeps me entertained. So this year I've had a break from Issa Showa because I've done them for two years and gone with Odokan. Because here's a guy that I think is, possibly going to be becoming a bit of a rising star on the breeding scene. Odokan is a dealer who was a Sakai Fish Farm senior staff for quite a long time, went out on his own as a dealer, and he's now breeding at his operation in Niigata. And I saw some of his Nisai Showa in autumn, and I was very, very impressed. So that sort of planted the seed for me that will give the Tosai a shot this year if they're available, and they look good. So, there's always some different characteristic and style you can get from these different lineages. Like I just mentioned there, the NND, the Umo Showa back in the day was such a different style. It had such an appeal to so many individuals, which is why it gained such popularity. And there's other niches out there. Ueno's got quite a strong distinctive style to his Showa. So much. So as well as a Hoshikin as well, quite distinctive. it really comes down to what you're looking for, I think, as opposed to who's best. So what characteristics do you want from the fish, first and foremost, and that can really determine what breeder you're probably going to head to get it. So, yeah. Right. So Amanda just coming back to us on that. So 200 Nexus, spray bar, 7,000 litre spindrift bottom drain. Yeah, 18 degree. And it's, nitrite, not nitrite. Yeah, well, fair play. It's there. So you're well in the cycle. Or I would say, Amanda, if you want to get out of your new pond syndrome cycle faster, heat it, crank the heat up. Every degree you go above 18 will make that filtration system work harder and develop the biofilm faster. So where you're at, if you can happy to get that up to 22, you're going to get yourself out of that so much possible. So personally, I'd look at going up to about 22, stopping, holding back with the water changing, let the system settle down, calm down, keep hitting it with the PSB, and eventually you're just going to see that fall off into the nitrite phase. Again, it'll help with the nitrite. So the longer you're warmer, you're going to cycle through the nitrite faster because that bacteria is a bit harder to get going. So certainly for this year, the longer you can sustain warmer water for through the heating, the more mature your pond will become in a shorter period of time. So that's the best advice I can give you on that one. Like I say, don't go mad with the water changing. Just let it find an equilibrium. Let nature do its thing a little bit and form the biofilm, and it will all settle down. Even at that, you'll probably expect to have trace nitrite for at least 12, even up to 18 months, depending on where you're at with that heating. So don't worry about that too much. Just get the scary numbers out of the way and get it all settled down and calmed down. Right, that's Graham come back to us as well. So, sorry, Ricky, I'm pump fed and only have a multi-bay filter so far. When adding the moving static begs, what do you advise? Best order of stages should be in from the pump to return to the pond. Yeah, so that's just anything, you know, with a fluid bed, it's the biological filter. So in your multi-bay, you're going to have your mechanical and your biological stage all in that one unit, pumping straight in from the pond. So you always want your mechanical stages first. Presumably in your multi-bay, you've got brushes or something like that. Or if you're using static K1 as your mechanical media, that wants to be first to remove all, or to basically trap and stop the mechanical debris passing through to the biological stage. Biological stage wants to be last in your multi-bay, in the cleanest part of the filter, obviously where you've got the least amount of waste passing into it. So that's going to be, you know, very last bay should be your moving bed if that's what you're implicating. And I would choose to go with K1 personally. I've seen various different forms of that now, depending on which you want to do. But yeah, I hope that helps you with that one, buddy. Right, so here we go. Saki, I'm running a non-heated pond at 13.4. What would you be running, I presume, using there, buddy? Yeah, Saki balance should be absolutely fine at that now, to be honest with you. Or if you want to spend the money, I've actually been, I'm all on pure white at the minute. I'm trialing it in my Danichi pond and I'm loving what I'm seeing from it. Just another insane product. The speed at which I'm seeing impact on the fish is just crazy. It's really holding it well, but as I've been digging more into it then, because it's such an easily digestible diet, it can actually be used instead of wheat germ, and you're going to get a load of other different rubs and benefits from it as well. So, yeah, either or there, depending on what you want to spend, balance or pure white. It'd probably be my choice with that one, given the temperature that you're at. And feeding is still going to be relatively minimal because you're only at 13. So, yeah, don't overdo it. Keith, hi Ricky, my pump failed yesterday, so the water has just sat in the pond for around 20 hours, got a new one started again. How damaging would that be to the filter bacteria as it's had no flow? Yeah, it's going to have had an impact, buddy, but to be fair, as long as it's not dried out, it's still been sat in the water, you're not going to damage that biofilm too much. So you'll have had a little bit of fall off, but you very quickly pull that back up. So I wouldn't worry too much, buddy, and I hope you've got your pump problem sorted out. Nothing more frustrating than that one. I have a KHF4. Is that okay? If that's a stable KHF4, happy days. Absolutely is. I'm going to, because this one comes up all the time. Ricky, I was trying to rewatch the video with Jos about the fluke treatment. Has it been removed? Yes, it was removed a long time ago for reasons I don't even want to mention because it's pretty vile. But needless to say, he was not the person that we all thought he was in a lot of senses. So currently in prison and is where he's going to stay for quite a while. So yeah, we wanted to have no more association with anything to do with that one, folks. So that's where we are with that. Tipsy tips. So hey, I have 2 pressure filters on my pond. I know not good enough, but all I can afford at the moment. Stop you with that one. They'll certainly do the job if you look after them properly. So don't put pressure on yourself. You know, we've said this already in one of my podcasts. You know, you can keep koi using pressure filters if you look after them properly and you don't overdo it. So yeah, chill out with that one. Would it be worth building a DIY biochamber to put after the pressure filter? I see a lot of build on boxes, etc. from B&Q. With the amount of K1 could fit in, would it be beneficial or waste? No, you'd be absolutely, that would improve things massively. So if you can construct your own sort of fluid bed or something after that, you can use the pressure filters more mechanically, which they're a great mechanical filter, to be fair. They do a cracking job. A bit heavier on the maintenance, but they'll really perform on that. Sponge is still a cracking mechanical media to use. We use it on our site, but it is a bit more maintenance. So absolutely, if you could do that, you could run those potentially through there, then into your biochamber. So you're gonna massively improve the potential performance of your pond there. So absolutely cracking idea you come up with. Don't be putting pressure on yourself that what you're doing is not good enough. You can absolutely create a successful pond from what you've got. But yeah, a little DIY tweak there in creating a biochamber and getting some K1 in there in a fluid bed form. It'll make a massive difference. So go for it. Great idea. What's the main cause of shimmies? Yeah, I think, nobody's actually determined this thus far, but all I can tell you with shimmies is from what I've seen, they say hard water, soft water. I think it's more genetically with lineages, but more even so, different benny types. Certain benny types, certainly with the more intense rich bennies, this tends to be more of a problem with them. And that has continuously come back to prove that to me time and time again, which is all right if you're aware of it. You kind of accept it and, you just deal with it. But that's where I'm at with that one. I think genetically, but even more so, the benny type. There's a couple of lineages I've had in the past that just seem to throw them constantly, and others that never seem to get them, so rarely. But ultimately, the really rich bennies do tend to attract the shimmies more for whatever reason. So as much as I can tell you with that one. Male, female, for me, if you are taking with a particular koi, I don't get caught up in that discussion. Happy days. I've not mentioned that today. I'm not going to go off on a rant on it as either, but yeah, completely agree, buddy. But male more so. I think the message is getting across, see more resurgence, and I've not started documenting what's going to be my super male pond this year, becoming quite a mature collection of big male fish as well. But I'm quite sure that pond alone is going to change a lot of opinions when you get to see it. So yes, look forward to that one. Tobias, what temp do you run your ponds in winter, and is that heated or ambient temp? So yeah, outside we run no heating, just ambient. They get mighty cold. Indoors we're running heating mainly because I'm raising fish and bringing fish through and quarantining. It's normally always in the 20s, to be fair. When I've got, because of how the heating system works, when there's a good few ponds in there, because they're uncovered within the greenhouse, even the ambients become like 16 degrees. So that's not through choice. It's not a temperature range I choose to keep them at. That's why I just tend to keep it all 18 or above, to be fair, because while the heating's on, we just make the most of using it, to be fair. Trevor, with the new fish season underway, any advice on adding new fish to a pond if you don't have a quarantine facility? Would you do any treatments as a precaution? Right, it's always a tricky one, this. I think I can't remember where, touched upon treatments and just doing precautionary treatments. I hate it. I'm not an advocate of that whatsoever. What you should be having, Trevor, to be fair, is a microscope, learning how to use that microscope. So your precaution starts at making sure, you're buying from a good dealer. On the premises you're buying from, you don't want to be seeing sick fish. If you see signs of bacterial disease or anything like that, walk away from it, because that's a real biosecurity hazard. And just make sure you've got a good feel, make sure they're credible. It's a dealer that's, others have got experience with, but mainly focus on what you're seeing in front of you, and certainly the system that it's coming from. Be aware, in some dealerships, not all the ponds are separated. Sometimes individual ponds all run off a centralized filter system, which can mean if there is an issue in one, it could be in several of the ponds. So pay good attention to that bit. And when you're introducing, you just bear in mind the first week is the most volatile stage, and you can put that fish in 100% clean and happy. And what happens is, through the mixing process in the pond, through the stress of catching, moving the fish, introducing it to new water, it's the perfect trigger for parasite problems. So you've got to be aware of that. The new fish can also be a trigger that if something's not right in your pond, what tends to happen is the new fish can actually fall real victim of that, because it could have come from an environment where, there's no pathogen pressure, for example. You could actually be on the verge of a bacterial problem in your own pond, but the fish's immune system's adapting, building to it, could have a high pathogen pressure. You go and introduce a new fish that's not got any of that resistance built up to what's going on in your pond. You throw it in there, and that just hits it like a bus, bang, and you're in trouble there. And it can throw problems in the new fish, which is often what gets blamed. So I think the best thing to do is you should be having your equipment, and it's always probably worth after a few days or after a week, just doing a scrape within the pond anyway, as a precaution, to see if there's any problems on the new fish or your existing fish, and just deal with what you're shown at that point. That's my advice on what I'll be doing. Precautionary medication I hate, because ultimately you're just putting all the other fish under stress that's probably not needed. And likewise, I know people do dips and things like that, putting the fish into the pond. It's all good, but if it's not required or not necessary, you could dip the fish, and that's potentially, if there was anything on it, you're going to stop it and kill it off at that point. But then if you've got something in your pond, it's going to attack that new fish at a rate of knots. So always best to let it get, fish get settled in there, check them after a week. And, if you buy in, one of the biggest things, and this is hard because going out and buying new fish is a really enjoyable process, but every new fish introduction is a stress factor added to your pond that is causing, potential upset to that environment. So if you're adding new fish in, once a week, once every couple of weeks, as some people do, that is creating vulnerability in your pond. So always probably better to introduce in batches and not too frequently, to allow things to keep settling down, and just be on your guard for that week, 2 weeks after introducing it, to make sure everything is all right. And if something does go wrong, you don't just go pointing the finger straight at the dealer, because there's a lot more to this, and it's not necessarily, it's kind of like last one in, first one blamed mentality, but it's really not like that when you're introducing new fish into a pond. There's a lot more variables to it all. Let's have a look. Paul, have you thought about cutting the audio from these lives and releasing them as podcasts? Would be great to listen to in the car. Yeah, I think we started that, to be fair, Paul, but to be honest with you, we have so much going on between us. We're a growing team, but still a relatively small team for the amount that we like to do. You probably noticed we've been farming the clips out from these on YouTube, because we know, it's a lot for new people who's discovering them to go back and find, give an hour to find a certain topic. So I had the guys doing that, but you wouldn't believe the amount of work that actually takes, rewatching, reclipping, doing that, scheduling the posting, on top of the magazine, running the fish farm, everything. It's a lot, buddy. So yeah, it's just probably one of them jobs we'll get to at some point on doing, but right now we just don't want any more on our plate, mate, being completely frank and honest about it. You can get YouTube played in your car. No, it's not necessarily integrated into like CarPlay or anything like that, but it is there. And wow, got back to the last couple of questions. Look, just to clarify, I'm looking at the air source pool heaters to use over the purpose-built koi pond ones. Are they the same? I couldn't really comment on that. I've not got into the whole heat pump thing so much. So I think it'd be worth talking to one of your dealers. I think ultimately they are the same product. I don't think there's a purpose-built koi one. Brands like Duratec's been big on the market, and they're in the swimming pool industry and everything. But yeah, I'm not really the person qualified to answer that one for you, buddy. Tobias again, how far ahead do you think Dainichi and Sakai is from the rest of the breeders? Do you think they are going to dominate shows for the next couple of years? Yeah, I think, to be fair, I mean, next couple, they've been doing it for so long now, but there's always the guys out there that can challenge. I mean, Maruyama now, as an example, he's had 2 Grand Champion wins, one with Shoal, one with Kohaku, so there's always potential. But I think all it is, when you actually boil it down, it's the whole scale thing. I keep saying it time and time again, Koi is a numbers game. And if we just look at the size of these operations, Sakai and Dainichi, even Sakai compared to Dainichi, you can't begin to comprehend the bit trickier with Dainichi because they're spread out over several different fish houses scattered over Niigata. So when we look at that, and then if you include Dainichi Toyota as well, you're looking a lot bigger. A lot of us don't even know of certain Dainichi koi houses and where they are. So it's hard to physically comprehend the whole scale. Sakai's a little bit more kind of in the couple of 2 or 3 locations, but all in that same little valley and village. So you can really just say, holy shit, the size. But yeah, the size of those 2 operations versus, what's next to it. There are other big ones like Marusei, for example, huge operation. They're just not really focused on the whole koi show scene, and that when you look, Dainichi and Sakai are focused on 2-3 varieties realistically. They've got other things going on now, yes, but there's been so much focus and dedication to those Go Sankey varieties. And I think even if we look at them, Sakai's been Kohaku and Sankey really, and Dainichi's been Showa and Kohaku. So although they do the others, there's so much focus and resource put behind those 2 varieties. It's no wonder they're dominant. And if we look at the players sat underneath it, like a Maruyama, Marudo, Nogami, them operations, although of some considerable size, just don't even scratch the surface of the size and scale of those places. But with that sort of economy of scale, the volume that they produce, that's when the numbers of potential grand champions increases drastically. So yeah, I do think it will be a while. I can't see who's really, even on the rise, seem to be growing rapidly enough to compete from a breeding perspective. So be interesting to see what the future holds with that one. And then, yeah, last bit to finish, just great point, reverse psychology. Or physiology about introducing new fish into your pond. Never really considered that. Yeah, it's a really true point. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, the dealer might be to blame, but there's really so much goes on. We know it better than anybody in fish mixing. And a new shipment coming in, as soon as we mix it, a lot of them start with problems. Whose fault is that? It's nobody's. It's just a natural process. And if you're aware of it, you know how to deal with it. It just reduces your problems. But ultimately, some responsibility sits with everybody in this chain, and the whole mixing fish together is a process that really just does rock the environment, rocks everything. So if you're on your game with it, you should be having a microscope. I think in that conversation, the price of koi these days versus the price of equipment like microscope, all you need then is the knowledge and experience, which goes a long way. It protects your collection more and stops problems happening. You get a few flukes flare up or a few parasites having introduced a new fish can be completely normal. And then, you diagnose it quickly, you medicate it, you're done, everything's settled down, happy days, it's job done. And, parasites, when they're kept in check and on top of, are never really going to cause you massive harm. They're just annoying and frustrating, to be fair. So there we have it. Graham, really appreciate it, Rice Ricky. Yeah, absolute pleasure, mate. So, yeah, there we have it. That's blasted through an hour. I enjoyed that. I'm going to make no promises when I'm going to be back again, because as I just kind of said, we've got a pretty hectic schedule of stuff. But certainly as and when, I think just going to end, we've got a few events coming up. I know the NND fish are making their way out to people now as the temperatures are rising. And as I say that, actually, I've looked up, it's absolutely hammering it down outside. Absolutely dreadful. So, yeah, we have actually managed to secure another deal with NND to have the mud pond again this year, to run the NND mud pond. So dead excited for that. We're just in the process of getting it all sorted. Obviously the Taniguchi Grow Out event, we've come towards that period now, so we're just trying to tie in my schedule to actually get out there to go and sort through those fish to decide what's happening with those for you guys, whether they're recommended to ship, come home, or whatever. So yeah, we'll be getting that finished off soon enough. And then yeah, got a big, really nice event coming up with one of our customers as well. A grow and show event that's going to be hosted at their premises with some stunning sockeye fish we've got selected out for it. So plenty happening. You'll be hearing more on all that soon. But for now, I'm going to tune out and thank you all for tuning in. And yeah, we'll be back. We're back when we're back with some more Q&A. So happy days. I'll catch you all soon. Thank you.